Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello and welcome to the WP Builds podcast, episode 78, entitled Amir Helzer Explains Toolset Relationships and Gutenberg Support. It was released on Thursday, the 31st of May, 2018. My name's Nathan Wrigley from pictureandword.co.uk, a small web development agency based in the north of England, and I'll be joined a little bit later by David Wormsley from davidwormsley.com so that we can have our usual discussion, and in this case it's called browser testing. How much should we do? At the very end, after we've had a chat with Amir Helzer from Toolset, we will go and have our little ending fact, which this time around is called Most Popular Themes. Please go and share this episode of the WP Builds podcast all over the place. iTunes reviews are always very helpful. We've got a Facebook group over at wpbuilds.com/Facebook. You can subscribe to our newsletter and pretty much everything else now. I've amended the subscribe page so that you can get onto the YouTube channel, the Messenger chat, the Slack channel, and so on and so forth. If you go to wpbuilds.com/subscribe. And I have to mention at the beginning of the podcast that Amir Helzer has offered 20% off any of the two licenses which Toolset offer. There's the one-site license and then there's the unlimited site license. They don't have a coupon code system. Basically, the link has to be hardwired, so you have to actually go to the wpbuilds.com/deals page. So that's /DEALS. And you can click on one of those two links if you'd like 20% off either of those two licenses, which is very, very generous indeed. Okie dokie. We don't have a competition at the moment or anything like that, but if you are a plugin developer and you'd like to offer one of your plugins, or indeed you know anybody who'd like to offer any of those kind of things, please send them in my direction. That would be most useful. So today we're talking to Amir all about Toolset. Toolset is a plugin which allows you to make custom post types and query all sorts of things with their views plugin. It's very, very complicated and allows you to do complicated things, but most recently they've updated it to version 3.0 and it allows you to do complicated things like relationships. We talk about that, but we also talk rather a lot about Gutenberg and all of the goodies that Amir and his team have packed in. So we'll get to that just in a little moment, but before then, if you would like to listen to me and David talk about browser testing, then stay tuned. Thanks for listening to the podcast yet again.
And today's discussion is browser testing, how much is worth doing? And I think I'll add on the end to that these days, because I think things have changed. Nathan, do you want to tell us about what you do, if you do anything?
Yeah, I think things have changed a lot. When I began making websites, it was in the era of Internet Explorer. I think it was 5.5 possibly at the time, was just coming around. And then shortly after that, we had the wonderful Internet Explorer version 6, which was just fabulous in every way. It never caused anybody a problem, he said mockingly. Because at that period of time, when I began, there was a what you might call a browser war. There had been Netscape Navigator. There'd probably been some other ones before that as well, but there was Internet Explorer, which was embedded into Windows, so it became the de facto browser. And then there was also Firefox had come around, and it was doing its open source wonderfulness. And at that time, browsers had major updates periodically, so they would, the software would be developed, and maybe a year would go by, and it would update itself. And the situation back then was that Mozilla, the people who created Firefox, I don't think in any way communicated with the Microsoft people. So they would introduce features which were not supported in Internet Explorer, and Internet Explorer would have its own way of doing this thing as well. And so if you've been making websites for the length of time that I have, you'll remember that you simply could not trust that a website would work on the browser that your audience might be looking at. So if they was using Internet Explorer 6, it would look wildly different to Internet Explorer 7 or Mozilla. And so whenever you made a website, you had this horrible process of going back, looking at the browsers, working out where the mistakes were, working out what you had to do. And then you had to create little CSS snippets. And sometimes it would be a completely different CSS style sheet devoted to Internet Explorer 6 and Internet Explorer 7 and then Internet Explorer 8. Thankfully, those days are now largely gone because the browsers automatically update. Everything's kept up to date. And as far as I'm concerned, they mostly, I'm going to say mostly, very reservedly, they mostly output a pretty much identical page. Whether you're on, well, what have we got now? We've got Internet Explorer has been replaced by Edge. We've still got Firefox. And now we've obviously got Chrome and Safari. And because they adopt, I think they're talking to each other more. A lot of the browsers are using the same sort of Chromium base toolkit, if you like, anyway. So I have become very lazy with this, and I don't really test them very much. And then, of course, to throw some more into it, we've got the advent of the mobile browser, which is a whole new thing to discuss. So, yes, it's become less important in my eyes.
Yeah, and the same with me. I mean, it did feel like when I started, that was the main thing. Mind you, I still see sites being in India. We'll go and look up some of the local council or government sites that you find for India, and you'll still see those little things saying best viewed at sort of 1024 on Microsoft's Internet Explorer. They still exist, those sites are still out there.
That's a worry, isn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it felt like that was the job that you did then. And particularly in those early days, maybe you classed them as kind of the leftovers of Web 1.0, where you were just really trying to recreate people's print advertising on the net. That's what it was all about. But yeah, these days, I don't do anything really now. I mean, I move around between the browsers that I have, and they seem to look okay, and it goes out there. And I wonder really what other people do with this, because, previously we'd be costing for that time to browser test to make sure it was going to work, where now I don't have this conversation with people and I don't do it.
Yeah, I used to have a clause in my contracts which would stipulate that if it was Internet Explorer 6 or earlier, well, for a start, I just simply wouldn't. The build would not encompass those browsers, and if they wished to worry about those browsers, then they would have to pay extra. And of course, that was in the days where the browsers updated very slowly, and you had to go and manually download the update. Then Chrome came along with its automatic updating, and I think the reason that we have become less, the reason it has become less of an obligation for us to test is in large measure because of the enormous amounts of work that the browsers have done to coalesce and to become more standardized. And I think that the people at Microsoft talk to the people at Mozilla, and I think they talk to the people at Google. And I think there was a very large drive to stop wasting everybody's time and get to the point where, with 99% certainty, the HTML served up in one browser would replicate what's served up in another browser, because all the standards were the same. A p tag meant this, and a div meant this, and it would always mean this. And obviously that's a very basic example, but things like that mattered in older browsers. So my process is, I have a Mac. I used to have a virtual machine using VirtualBox so that I could run Windows, so that I could test things on Internet Explorer. But all I do now is, when I've built the site, I'll build it in Chrome, and then I will look at it on my Mac version of Firefox. I'll look at it on, well, I believe you can only look at it on the Mac version of Safari. I don't think they make it on Windows anymore. So I'll look at it in those three browsers. It's been a very, very long time since I looked at it and thought, oh, there's a difference there. In fact, I genuinely can't remember the last time. And then I've got an Android phone, So I'll pick that up and browse it on the phone and hope that everything is as expected. Or I might shrink the the viewport size on the desktop. Because nobody's querying the what browser you're looking at anymore. Nobody's querying to see if it's an Android browser and serving up a completely different site. We're just now collapsing things and using responsive design to make it the correct size. And that's what I do. I just eyeball it, and if it looks fine, I leave it. And I think because I'm a big user of page builders and all of that technology, a lot of that work has gone on in the background by people other than me.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this because I'm now going towards offering different products to clients. And I was thinking, could I have browser testing as a product? But I don't even know what that would look like these days, because the last couple of times I was caught out on something not displaying in browsers was not really something I would have picked up, I don't think, through testing. One was that I had a drop-down menu that wasn't working on iPhones, and that was due to minification that I did with WP Rocket, which I would have added after I'd done my testing. And another quirk that came up recently was something to do with the Edge browser, which it's actually something to do with the source set attribute, where if you got under certain circumstances where you had a heavy load on a page, it would squish up the images. It wouldn't work properly. And it's just a little bug. It's not something that you'd really necessarily pick up through browser testing, because for me to replicate that, I had to keep refreshing a page over and over and over and over again. So, yeah, so I actually wonder what you do. I mean, have you ever used any of these tools, Nathan, that are around? Have you used like browser shots or?
Do you know, in the day, I toyed with those kind of things. If memory serves, you would kind of feed it a URL and wait a little while, and it would show you an image. I can't remember whether you could interact with them or not, but it would give you visual feedback of what it looked like on different browsers. I presume they would, put that into a browser on a legitimate machine with that actual browser on it, and then take sort of screenshots. So I did, but I did it just as an experiment, in the same way that you do with everything. A new technology comes along and you play with it, because I had enough browsers and I had two computers, so I kept one on the old version of Internet Explorer and would test it on that, and then I would I'd keep the most up-to-date version on the other computer. Then like I said, I used VirtualBox and had all sorts of versions of Windows XP and so on, and Windows whatever the next version was. So no, and I think those presumably are a bit dead in the water as businesses. However, the same problem that we had with all of that still does exist in a quirky way, and that is emails. Email clients still behave in this horrible way. I mean, they're definitely getting better, but I create quite a lot of HTML emails, and I have to test those. And so you can use services like Litmus and things like that. And I do test them, but I tend to keep my emails fairly in rows, so that's mitigated. But if you're doing a complicated layout of images and pictures, it can still genuinely be a nightmare creating table-based layouts for email clients. I really hope that's going to be behind us soon, because it's just ridiculous.
That's interesting, because there has been quite a move. I've seen a lot of people who do digital marketing well and copywriting particularly talk about how emails that do better have less in them. So they just have some very simple text in it. And I just thought, I'm not going to worry about this stuff.
Yeah,
but I guess you have.
No, I was going to say, have you noticed how all the internet marketers, the guys who really do well at it, they just write in plain text.
Yes.
I think the theory is that it seems more like an authentic email, because obviously if you were to get an email with loads of aligned images and crazy fonts and all of that, that's clearly, it's an advert.
Yes.
And it's obviously been designed to be put into an autoresponder and sent out many, 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 many times. Whereas ones where, they have merge tags and things so that your name gets put in there and all that kind of stuff. That feels, I think, a little bit more authentic. Anyway, but we digress. We're no longer talking about browser testing, are we?
No.
So,
and I don't know what. The tools. I mean, the only two I remember, and this is going back because I've not tried them, was BrowserStack was the Pro one, which was really expensive. It would test everything, but as I say, very expensive. And then there was this one called Browser Shots. Which
That's the one I was about to say. Yeah, Browser Shots. That rings a bell.
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
one
it looks
I
like
used.
yeah, 2002. It looks like that was made in or something. I don't even know if it works now. I must go and check it out. But this one conversation I have not seen in any of our Facebook groups at all about browser testing. So, do we do it these days? Does anybody do it?
Yeah, my guess is that what I do is overkill, because I think the time will soon arrive where it'll be the same. And in a way, it doesn't really make sense for the browsers to behave differently. I mean, I could see that in the beginnings of the internet, when these proprietary systems like Microsoft with their Internet Explorer and Mozilla, they were trying to do things by themselves to sort of push the technologies. Well, now with these consortia and a much more open approach to developing these things, I think we've realized that really the money doesn't come from the browser itself. It comes from all the things that the browser serves up. So why not just make the best browser, make it open source, let everybody use it, everybody contribute to it, make it better over time, and then we can all benefit, rather than having these proprietary technologies where this browser can do this thing, whereas this browser can do that thing. Do you still use things like -moz for things like border radius and things like that?
Oh, no.
Yeah,
I never have.
I seem to remember all of that kind of stuff. You know, you would use a different border radius setting for Mozilla, and you'd use a different one for, the rest of the world and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, hopefully those... Hello?
I do. Yes, no, I do that. Sorry, I realise what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if that will pass us by. I still do it just because it's habit, and I have those snippets in my IDE. So when I want to do a border radius, I literally click a button and it just chucks that in. So I don't really think about what I'm writing, and maybe the time has come just to use border radius. Maybe that's just utterly obsolete now.
Yes. In fact, talking of that, I think there was a little bit of JavaScript that used to work to make it work in IE 8 and maybe some later versions as well. And I bet they're still on some of my old sites because I used to add that as well.
I've just remembered what the thing was that made Internet Explorer so horrible. Do you remember it was the transparent PNG? It couldn't do it. And there was, I remember this. So, yeah, there was all sorts of little JavaScript hacks that you could put in to fake it. And it somehow, you would overlay the whole page with like this 1 pixel transparent PNG. Or I can't remember how it all worked, but thankfully all of that's behind us. So the bottom line is, we don't really do a massive amount of browser testing anymore. We just inspect it, eyeball it, and get it out the door.
Yeah, and I would love to hear if there is a product that I could make that is testing and how I might go about that. So if anybody does do this and knows how they go about their system, I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, that would be good. You know, and especially if we're being lazy, you know, is there some horrible gotcha that we are missing that might be upsetting our clients? Perhaps there is. I don't know. Well, there we go. All right, so that was browser testing. How much do we do it? And I guess now we'll move on to our interview section. Okay, hi there, everybody. This is the interview part of the podcast now. And for the second time, actually, I think it's probably about a year ago since we had Amir Helzer on from what is now Toolset. Hi, Amir, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks a lot. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Amir's the CEO, I think that's right, of On The Go Systems, which is a very popular plugin development team. And Amir is in Israel. I don't know. Is your team all over the world, or are you basically all in one office? How does that work?
I'm the only one. No, we have 2 other people from Israel.
Okay.
Most of our guys are from Europe, a lot in South America, some in Asia.
Oh, okay, so really spread out. Now, the thing that Amir's famous for, I suppose, the products that you've probably heard of are a couple of things. There's WPML, which we're probably not going to touch on today too much. but the ability to make your site multilingual. But we're going to focus a little bit more on Toolset, which can now be found over at toolset.com. When did you actually purchase toolset.com? That seems to me like it was in the last 6 months or so.
About a year ago.
Yeah. Okay, so we're over at toolset.com, and the plugin Toolset, well, it's not just one, it's a whole raft of different plugins that enable you to do all sorts of things. Maybe Amir, maybe that's a good place to start. Would you mind just elucidating? Tell us what Toolset is capable of and what it's typically used for.
So I like to think about it as having a developer working next to you and doing his work really quickly and for free.
That's a nice, simple way of doing it. You install a whole raft of different products, so you can get forms, and you can get views, and you can get custom fields and custom post types and all of this kind of thing. But you've been busy recently for a whole variety of reasons, and one of the reasons is that you've got version 3.0 coming out. It says the production version is coming very soon. On the website. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the latest and greatest stuff that you've been up to recently?
So if anyone is familiar with our products and watching our development progress, then I'll just start with the end. We're freezing the development at the end of this week, which is Thursday, so it's not a lot of time. We'll be spending the next 2 weeks on QA. We got nice feedback from the release candidate that we released a few days ago. And then 2 weeks from now, and we should have a production release. So that's for people who are familiar with this, our clients who may be listening. For anyone else, this has been the largest development cycle that we had for Toolset. We've had a team of, I think, 7 developers working on this for over a year. And basically, we rebuilt most of the product from the ground up using the feedback that we collected since the project started, maybe at 2011 or so, some 7 years ago. So, over time, you learn. At the beginning, you make assumptions, then you learn stuff, and then you apply them. And we thought that it would be nice to apply major changes together, because otherwise, when you break it up into little pieces, then you need to make a bunch of sacrifices. So it's taken longer than we wanted, but still we're at the end now, and we have basically a brand new product which does significantly more than what it could do until now.
When I often hear this phrase, "we built it from the ground up," which it kind of feels to me, not being a plugin developer or in any way, shape or form connected with that kind of thing, it often feels like that people say that as a way of expressing how fabulous and new it is. Do you literally start with absolutely blank pages and go from there, or do you? How does that work? What does it actually mean when you say we built it from the ground up? What proportion of the stuff is brand spanking new, and what are the reasons? Why do you need to build it from the ground up?
We actually started with mockups. This time, no, sorry. We started with usability testing, and then we proceeded to mockups. One team did the UI part, the other team did the backend architecture. So it's a big word. I'm sorry for that. But
no.
in our case, the backend architecture meant the database schema, meaning how you're going to store stuff, and from this, how we're going to use it. Okay, and how things will connect together. And then somewhere in the middle of the work, the mockups had to, and the architecture had to meet. They didn't meet halfway through. It's not a compromise from both sides. It's how to put in to implement the architecture into the UI design.
What are the new features that you've added that required this rebuild? Because I know it's an incredibly complicated product that you're offering, and explaining what it does is really hard. But
no, that's the other thing. complication is not a goal, it's a result, and we try to make it less complicated this time around. So we didn't want to just pack in more and more and more features and make it yet more complicated. We looked at actually what people are doing, what they're trying to do, and what they're doing at the moment, and said, okay, how can we build it so it's more straightforward to do it, not more complex to do.
How do you actually gather that intelligence? Do you sit with people, or do you just have, do you stare over their shoulder and watch them perform tasks, or do you just write it? Is there some sort of Slack channel or process that people can get involved in to to assist with this?
Okay, well, we have lots of information. The support forum for once, so you see what things people find need support on, right? What they're asking for support about, and where support gets complicated. Support comes to us with feature requests. Sorry, I'm interrupting myself. We have developed daily meetings with our developers. We're a distributed team, so we do it over the internet, but we still have daily meetings. The people who start these meetings every day would be the support team. So they tell us which urgent problems we have to fix, and also what issues clients find difficult to do. Okay, so the entire development team knows every day about urgencies, hopefully having less of them, and about difficulties. So for urgencies, we need to come up with a solution right away. We don't want someone to say to hear, yes, this is on our roadmap, sit tight and we'll get back to you. That's not going to work. This is for urgencies. But for difficulties, we can't give a solution right away to everything, because sometimes, if it's difficult but there is a solution, then it stays as a support problem. But having the entire development team hear about these difficulties day after day, then you understand the importance, you understand what's pressing people. Okay, so this is one way of learning. The other way, and it doesn't cover everything, the other way is to do usability testing and measure. Just measure. It works great, right?
Yeah. Sorry. I thought you were going to carry on. No, that's fine.
I can explain what usability testing is if anyone's interested.
I think we'll. Yeah. Well, why not? Go on. Just in a brief summary.
You ask someone to do something for you. You observe. You don't offer assistance besides explaining the instructions, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do, because you sit there, you say, just click the button. It's a blue button. It's right there. Just click it. But you don't do this. And it's really frustrating, because sometimes it happens at the very beginning, and there's a whole range of things that you want to test. And you have to resist the temptation, because you need to see this. You can't help him out in order to see the rest of the stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So you watch this.
Carry on.
Watch this. You make sure that the people who are responsible for the product, they watch this also. Everyone takes notes about what they observed as being a problem, not what they thought would be a problem, but where they see the person actually getting stuck at. And then you make decisions about what changes you want to do in the product in order for this problem not to happen again.
Do you have any sort of concrete examples of where you watched that behavior, you saw a problem, and have now in the release candidate, which is going to be coming out very soon, where you fixed it? Could you illustrate for us a fix?
Yeah, in the last 2 usability sessions, we focused on the experience of new clients. So we invited people who've never seen Toolset to use it. We gave them a challenge. They were to add the custom type to had one custom type to the site, add a few custom fields, design their own templates, their own archives, and their own views for that. And besides the introduction time, we had 50 minutes for each session. So within 50 minutes, they should have gotten a basic understanding of the product. They should be able to build a decent site for their clients. Not a beautiful site. We didn't spend much time on the cosmetics, on the visual design. We wanted everything to work. on the client side. And actually, a lot of the feedback that we got from these 2 sessions was about documentation, and we fixed that, and eventually it worked. So a real simple example, we told, you can use different page builders with Toolset. You can use layouts, you can use just plain HTML, you can use Divi, Beaver Builder, other page builders. We told clients, these are the instructions, do whatever you like. Okay. And so we noticed that at the first session, at the first round of testing, people kept reading the wrong instructions because we put different instructions for different methods on the same page. And, well, obviously nobody reads each and every word. So people were kind of drawn to screenshots with high contrast.
No.
Yeah, they were drawn to high contrast screenshots, and they were clicking on the instructions for a different builder.
Well, who would have thought? That's a really interesting little insight.
So this is what you get from usability testing. All these who would have thought stuff. It's a whole hour of exactly these kind of moments.
Yeah, I really like on your very recent blog post on the 26th of April, you've put a time limit on it, what the usability improvements are in trying to get, master the basics in 45 minutes and try to get some more advanced things under your belt in under an hour. That strikes me as a really nice aspiration. When I've used things like views and tool sets in the past, I have to confess, I've been able to find all of those things relatively easily. It didn't really trouble me too much, but some of the more difficult stuff, which Toolset is more than capable of, presumably that's even more difficult to test, if you're trying to create complicated views and conditional logic and all of that kind of stuff. Presumably you try to tackle that a little bit as well, or do you leave all that stuff out of your usability testing and think, look, the hard stuff is going to be hard anyway?
No, I mean, that's not going to be a smart thing to do. So going forward, we're going to do usability testing once a month now. We have a calendar with what we want to test, and we're going to cover everything, basically everything. Right. I mean, why decide that you want to keep the really good stuff difficult to use?
Yeah. No, that's lovely. It is. There is an awful lot of complexity in there, isn't there? And I confess I've sort of scratched the surface of it, but that's really nice to know. The latest version that's coming out quite soon then, apart from improving the usability of stuff which is familiar, is there any fun new stuff which you've thrown in there as well? Anything that is brand new that people will not have used before?
The post-relationship stuff is new. Until now, we had parent-child relationships, which is basically one-to-many relationships. Mm-hmm. Now we have many-to-many relationships. We have repeating groups of fields. We have post-reference fields, and everything that comes with it.
Do you want to explain why this stuff is important? There's probably a significant amount of people who hear those words and they're unaware of what the impact of that is and how important it could be.
Sure. So if you're building a site which has maybe one page which tells your address in the world and a few words about yourself and your phone number, you probably don't need that. But if you're building any content-driven site, meaning something which has a lot of information and people need to find this information and use it, then you're most likely going to use this stuff. Or you should use this stuff if you understand what it is. Mm. Let's say that you're building a car dealership site, okay? And so you're going to have cars, presumably, and you may have agents, and the cars have makers, okay? And they have different attributes. So you see all this information is somehow connected, right? An agent is responsible for something. The cars belong to a brand. There is service information that you may need to know. And the you want to put all this information on the site. So far, okay?
So far, so good.
Okay. And this is not something imaginative. If you look at our showcase on toolset.com, well, at least 70% of the sites use that.
Okay.
At least. The thing is, you don't have to look at our showcase. You're thinking maybe these guys attract really tough nuts. So you can go ahead and look at the showcase sites of Avada, for instance, a very popular theme, and you'll discover the same thing. But what you'll discover when you look at the showcase of Avada is that the information is there, but people had to work very hard in order to maintain it on the site and present it. And then visitors don't have convenient access to this information because it's all inside pages, basically. The difference between having really a dynamic site and static site is like a static site is like a carbon copy of the real data. Okay, if you have this car dealership site, then you can just print out just let's say look at the list of cars and click print screen, and now you click on a car, you do print screen, and you pin all these printed screens, you put them somehow together and connect with them in the menu, which is gonna work, right? But maintaining it is a different story.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so after you've made all these print screens, save them, and you put them as pages on your site, you want to make a little change. You want to include another field there, or you want to connect all these things to something else. Let's say you want to just show which car sold the most, so you need to track how many items you sold and create a dynamic index that shows most popular cars this month. You know, maybe it's good. Maybe people like to buy according to popularity. They
Yeah, sure. They do.
Yeah. So you want to do this. Now, it's really difficult when all you have is screenshots. You want to be able to add this information to the site's backend, and you don't want to go to each and every car and include this in the design again and again. And you want to be able to design the listing for it or the template for it, which shows this new information, right? I mean, it doesn't sound like rocket science. But if your content isn't connected together, and if you haven't used separate fields for different pieces of information, it's all just inside the page as design elements, then this becomes really impossible.
What is it that's new in the advanced post relationships that didn't exist before, when you had parent-child and all of that? What's the level of complexity that can now be achieved that was unachievable with the previous version?
When we designed our post relationship at the beginning, we thought that most people will need parent-child relationships, which is one to many, meaning there's one parent and many children.
Yeah.
And we thought that many-to-many relationships are going to be something nice that only a few people need. And we've learned that in many practical sites, people need the many-to-many case. So it's not like 5% of the sites, it's more like the majority of the sites. So for instance, you're making a site for university and you want to have students and courses. Okay, so a student can register to many courses, and a course typically has many students. That's a many-to-many relationship. We came up initially with a smart way of using two one-to-many relationships kind of glued together, which worked, and people still use that. But this is where it gets really complicated to understand. So something which is easy to explain was very difficult to implement, right? And this is what we're changing now. So something which I could describe in one sentence now also takes maybe 15 seconds to set up and use.
Wow. And
rather than several hours.
Yeah, and presumably is much more straightforward to use and understand, and you've documented it all, so it's nice and easy for us to sort of follow along, I'm guessing.
That we will see.
Yeah.
But you go through a wizard, you explain the relationship in English terms, not in programmish terms.
Yeah.
And then when you're editing, you can see, when you're editing a student, you can see a list of courses, and you can connect an existing course to that student, or you can create a new course for that student. Same thing when you're editing a course, you can see the list of students and connect with them. So that's fine. When you're creating the template for a course, then you can insert a view which shows the students that participate in this course.
Yep.
And you can already see that now you need to understand what you're doing. So it's not convoluted, but in order to succeed in it, you need to remember what you're doing. I think this is the challenging part here.
I think also it's faint. I mean, the reality is that some of the stuff that Toolset is capable of doing it's just hard, and actually getting your head around it is actually quite hard. And I feel sometimes that's what. That's where people give up with this stuff, because they find it difficult to plow on and keep going.
I learned from one client who was very kind to us and showed us his methodology, and this I think is very nice. He first does like a blueprint, like a plan of everything that he's going to have in the site, and it draws arrows between the different things. And he makes it very visual to himself, what's going to appear in the site. And then when he goes to implement it, the problem is remembering, really. So then when he goes to implementing his own site, and he's at a certain element, and he looks at it and says, oh yes, but this element also relates to this and this and this.
Yep.
And then he immediately understands, okay, so this is what I need to do.
Yes. Yeah. Having a visual representation is because as soon as you kind of click out of one screen and then you go and adapt the other thing that needs adapting, by the time you've gone off and had a coffee and things like that, everything's gone. I like that way, but it's a difficult thing, and I think sometimes people are all too willing to say, oh, the tool doesn't work for me, or the UI is too difficult. Well, actually, I think the UI for Toolset is great, but it's just you're trying to tackle things which are fabulously hard. So yeah, okay. Let's move on from the sort of the recent updates of Toolset, and if you don't mind, let's get into the subject which is on everybody's lips at the moment, and that is WordPress 5.0 with its Gutenberg project. And I'm just interested to know what you guys are doing to make Toolset compatible with that, and what you've done so far, and what you think about Gutenberg in general.
Thanks. So. Well, first thing, what Gutenberg is. We understand that Gutenberg is supposed to be the built-in page builder for WordPress. And this, I think, is still open to debate also, because other people will tell you that Gutenberg can exist inside other page builders as the content builder. So this remains to be seen, I guess. It depends who you ask and where they're coming from. According to how we see Gutenberg working on our development sites, it looks like a fully featured page builder. So this is how we consider this. And it's going to ship into WordPress core not so much time from now, not in a very, very distant future. In more time than some people are saying, but not within a year or so, a lot sooner than that. So having said this, obviously Toolset needs to be fully integrated with Gutenberg, and not only Toolset, everything that we build. Meaning for Toolset, specifically for Toolset, you need to be able to design templates, archives, views, and forms with Gutenberg. Okay, and so today you can design within Toolset without any additions. You can design these elements with either plain HTML or with our layouts editor.
Yep.
And we also have integrations with a number of page builders. now, as soon as Gutenberg is available, you'll have the option to design it with Gutenberg. So if you have Gutenberg active on that site, that should be your default, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So for instance, you're going to design, let's say that you're building a real estate site. Okay, you're going to design a template for a house, and you're going to use the Gutenberg editor. It already has columns and blocks, so you can create a top section with, it says, a featured image, and inside that you can put some text, and underneath it you can create several columns, and in each column you can put in different fields. Okay, and you save it. So you've designed the template visually. You save it, and then when you go and edit a house, you don't see the standard WordPress editor. You see the template that you've designed, and the fields appear like frozen in it. So like you cannot move the fields around. What you can just do is enter the values into the fields. You can upload an image. You can enter the price, information like that. Okay. So, yes.
No, I was just going to say, I think that's quite intuitive, and I think that people, especially people who don't build websites, people who are just using them, I think they'll find that quite useful. That visual way of inputting the data. Yep.
Yeah, and I think that Gutenberg was designed for them, not for the developers.
No.
So that the end users have an easier way of using WordPress from now on. They don't need to learn so many different tools. The hope for Gutenberg is that the custom fields section will be mostly unnecessary, which I think is going to happen. So in our real estate example, you're still going to enter values into post meta, into custom fields, but you just enter the values in place, not in a text list below.
Yep.
There are still going to be some places where you'll probably want to use text custom fields separately as text fields. For instance, when you have a repeating field group, it's going to be very impractical to use it inline.
Yeah.
Because you don't understand what you're doing. Other than this, I think everything is going to be inline from now on.
How has it been from your point of view and your team's point of view? Obviously, it's been nothing but Gutenberg for the last year, but certainly the last 6 months. Has it been plain sailing, adapting to Gutenberg, or have you had headaches and had to go back and redo things as the team at Gutenberg have changed things?
Well, luckily for us, it's been a straight line so far.
Great.
We did the same approach as I think Napoleon did, maybe. No, really. Whatever worked for us, we continued, and whatever didn't work for us, we asked for help. And I think Gutenberg folks have been very cooperative with many authors like us, third-party authors. I think this is why they released the plugin version on WordPress.org so early. Not so much to get hammered by angry clients, users, but in order to get the cooperation of other plugin developers.
Yeah.
So I don't think that we got stuck with anything. We had issues. They worked with us on them on GitHub, and they got resolved. So they did this in order for them to understand the issues.
Do you see Gutenberg over time making your layouts feature slightly more obsolete than it is now, or do you plan to continue to develop that in tandem with Gutenberg?
It's going to be at least different than now.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not going to be obsolete, but it's definitely going to be different. Layouts, if you look at the name layouts, it started as a layout engine to design the structure of the site, the structure of pages, not to design the inside of each page. And we kind of got dragged into designing the inside of pages because this is what people asked us to do. But I would definitely say that layout is not the best page builder for WordPress by far. It is a good layout editor, though. If you compare layouts to any other tool in WordPress to build layouts is better. It's a good tool for building layouts, but it's not a good tool as a page builder. And I would be super happy if layouts went back into its place of being a layout editor.
So simply put this here, put that there, and don't worry. And this is not intended to make it look nice. It's just that's where it goes.
Yeah, let's have a widget area here. Let's have a footer here. Let's have all this. And let's not design it with this tool. So I think, according to the demos that I've seen for Gutenberg, it will definitely allow you to control different parts of the page, to design the look of different parts of the page. I haven't seen any demo for Gutenberg which attempts to arrange the layout of the page.
No, nor I yet. What I'm fascinated with Gutenberg is just everybody's different angle on it, and the fact that we still don't really know what it's going to be. And each person that I talk to who does something akin to you, a plugin developer, has got their own take on it and how difficult it's been and how easy it's been. And I'm glad that for you at least anyway, it's been plain sailing so far, because it could have been otherwise, couldn't it? I guess there was there was a very large chance that it could have really disrupted things for you. So I'm really pleased.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Moving on, completely different subject. A little while ago, and you'll be able to tell me exactly when it was, you had a real change of tactic with your pricing. In that up until, well, when was it that you changed your pricing model?
About a month ago, maybe a month and a half now.
How's that gone? Because previously there was the option, and it was something that I actually bought into many years ago, to buy everything in this one-off fee with lifetime access, if you like, and that's now been removed, and now we're on to more straightforward pricing, which is kind of like the industry standard, I think, of recurring yearly fees and what have you. What was the decision behind that, and has it been well accepted, or have you had some blowback on that?
Well, so basically we realized that lifetime licenses, they're very similar to free licenses.
Yes.
Well, unless you want to do just a very short-lived project, and you don't really care what happens in 2 years from now.
Yes.
If you're planning to have a long-term relationship with your clients, and you want clients to keep using what you built for several years from now, lifetime is free.
Because at some point you start bearing the cost of those people, because you've kind of spent their money, if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to build something sustainable when it's free. You need to pay salaries, you have support people, you want to do something. You can't do this without money.
Yeah.
Nobody can.
Did you communicate with your audience and encourage people to, that this was going to happen, or did you just sort of make a snap decision and get on with it?
We announced it. We discussed this, but not everyone got the update. And then not everyone was extremely pleased with this. So first thing, I can see why. So if lifetime means free, then it means everyone gets it. It's not just us who understand. Everyone understands it. When someone wants to buy a lifetime product, it's because he makes a good decision that this is something that he's going to use for a long while, and he doesn't want to keep paying for it, which kind of makes sense. I would want to do this if I had the chance. Like, if I could buy a lifetime gasoline for my car, I would do this today.
That's a great example.
I wouldn't be sitting here talking with you.
That's perfect. Yeah, sorry, that's me. I've done exactly that.
I know.
Yeah.
We want to be able to invest in the product.
Yeah.
We want to be able to support our clients, and we cannot do this if they're not paying for it.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess when the business started, who knew that it was going to go on for this long? Who knew that WordPress was going to become as popular as it did and the default CMS?
That's one thing. And the other thing is the maturity. So when the project started, people were right to suspect, to have doubts. They don't know if it's going to succeed.
Yeah.
When they buy a lifetime account 6 years ago, lifetime for what? Maybe for 6 months? Who knows? And they didn't know if they're going to like the product. So maybe they're wasting their money on an expensive lifetime account, and they're going to stop using it after 7 months. They're not going to get a refund for that. So everyone was taking a risk at the beginning.
Yep.
But we're in a different situation now, and we see the scale now. We know how to do the math. We know more or less how much we need to invest in each client in terms of ongoing support. We know this. We can calculate. We have enough historic data for that. We know how even development. An existing client doesn't require only support. He also requires development, because once in a while you need something that not so many other people need, and we don't want to leave you hanging. So we can't. People know, our clients know that we're not able to implement all the features that everyone asks instantly.
Yeah.
But still, we implement quite a lot of features that only a few clients need.
Yeah.
So existing clients cost you support and development.
I think the entire community would understand everything that you've just said and would judge it fair. I guess the only people who have got a quibble would be the people who sort of missed out on that and feel.
Yes, but okay.
That's
So
life.
no, it's life, and it's also to learn from. So what I learned from this, and we're doing the same for WPML, just differently. What I've learned from it is that we announce it clearly. We announce it more than once. We don't assume that because we've sent out an email, everyone read it. So we're announcing it more than once. We're making it crystal clear, and some people will still not get it on time, and we need to find a way to make them at least reasonably happy.
Yeah.
So the reasonably happy arrangement that we have for Toolset is that we tell people, listen, you're gonna it costs you more from now. So when you bought it, it would cost something like this. If you would upgrade, you'd set up the automatic renewals now. At least for the first year, you get a refund for the difference between what you expected to pay.
Good. Yeah.
It's not a whole lot of money, but that's the least that we can do.
Yeah. And what is the current pricing?
It hasn't changed, just that there is a yearly renewal. So you can buy the basic account, which allows you to get automatic updates for one site, and this thing costs $69 initially. And then there's a 25% discount for the yearly renewals. Let me just see how much that is. So 69. So that's $51 a year for the renewal.
Okay. Yeah.
That's if you want to get for one site.
One site.
For unlimited sites, it's 149 initial for the first year, and then 111 for the yearly renewals for unlimited sites.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair pricing. I mean, to be perfectly honest, there's an awful lot of people charging higher fees than that for something which does considerably less, shall we say, and probably don't have quite the team that you've got to support in the background.
Well, but yeah, a customer doesn't care how much money we're spending on the team. He cares what kind of value he gets for this.
Yeah.
This is why we're doing all these usability testings, because, well, I think you can fix the value in two ways. Either you ask for less money, or you divide it by more sites. So if today someone builds 3 sites a year with Toolset, and he says, I have another 3 sites that I need to build, but it's a lot of work for me, so maybe I'll choose a different tool. Then it's 149 divided by 3.
Yep.
But if you make it a lot easier for him to use, then it's 149 divided by 6, which costs less, right?
Yes, yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. Yeah, I like it. If it's all right with you, we'll just sort of round off. I asked in my communities some random questions to be given. And I'll just go through a few of them. Some of them I think we've tackled anyway, but one of the ones which came up quite a lot was Elementor, the page builder, which is...
It's also developed in Israel,
Yes. I was speaking to Ben Pines. We had him on the podcast probably about 3 months ago now. That's right, yeah. And I wondered if there was some connection, because maybe you guys actually know each other or something. Your team.
We definitely know each other, right? We don't live that far away from each other. I think there's a great interest on both sides to make it work. It's just that each team has its own priorities. So I think that the Elementor guys have been extremely busy in the last months, because they went out with Elementor 2,
yeah,
which includes a whole bunch of new features.
Yep.
And now I think that they will continue being a little busy because these features now work more tightly with themes. So I imagine that they have a little bit of support load on their hands going to their development team. So as soon as they get around to doing this integration, they already have everything that they need from us.
That's nice to know. That's good. Okay, that's maybe answered that question. I think people were just saying this is something that they're anxious to get in their hands. The combination of Toolset with Elementor would be a nice killer combination. So great. Oh, wonderful. Let's have a look. Another question which kept coming up was inside of Toolset, you've got the ability to add custom fields. And one of the questions was asked, are there any more fields that might be coming along in the future that are going to be added? Well, I mean, the question goes on and on, but I'll just leave it like that. Have you got any more, maybe more complicated fields coming down the track?
It's very easy for us to add new kinds of fields, and we haven't had many requests for adding different field kinds. So if clients do want that, then please talk with us. Tell us what you need. Explain to us what you're going to do with it, and it's really easy to do.
Yep. And you've recently renamed a core component of Toolset called CRED, which is an acronym which I didn't realise, to Toolset Forms. Have I got that right?
Yeah. Yes, nobody realized that.
No. Does that? What is it? Create something.
Yeah, create, read, edit, and delete. It's used a lot in universities.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense when you say it. Is there any plan for that to become at any point a more fully featured Forms plugin? Is one question.
Yes, and actually. I recently solicited feedback from clients about what they need in CRED, and we got a lot of very useful feedback. So now that we're done with this major post-relationship project, the developers working on CRED, this is their next project.
Yeah. Oh, great. Okay, so that'll be really interesting to watch out for. Good scoop
but
there.
There also, hold your excitement, because when someone says full, now everyone means something else with this fullness.
Yeah, they basically want you to replicate gravity forms or something like that.
Yeah, not necessarily different. And then we discovered that different people have different ideas. Other people want to have webhooks like in Drupal.
Yeah.
It's a very open question.
Yeah. Okay. There was some mention from one question about you've got a theme builder program. I forget what it's called. Is that still ongoing? You had some sort of...
Because of our changes in our account system, we had to kind of freeze it a little bit because we didn't prepare to sell it with the new subscriptions. And we're fixing this right now, and we're making it work with a new development in Types 3.0, and then we will get back to promoting it.
Okay. Oh, good. Okay, that's nice. Yeah, it seemed like when I saw the press releases for that, it seemed like a really nice idea.
People are actually using it. It's not bad.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. And then the final question for today, if that's all right. This is a bit of a strange one. This must be from a Drupal user, I'm guessing, because it just says rules plugin for WordPress ?
That's what I was referring to. This works with forms, and it allows you to determine what happens after you do something.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to have this.
I would like you to have to do that.
There's actually a WordPress plugin which does this with Gravity Forms, and we have a compatibility team made up of smart people, and my first preference would be to get other authors who already built this to make it work with Toolset.
Yeah, that sounds like a sensible way of doing it. I remember being an ex-Drupal user myself. It was along with the views module, rules was just an absolute, it was a home run. It was so powerful and so useful. So yes, that'd be great if that can be coming down the line. So there you go. That was Amir from Toolset, On The Go Systems, WPML, and all of those good things. Is there anything you would like to add? Any URLs you want to drop or promotional stuff you want to say just before we round off?
Well, your visitors are invited to see toolset.com, our site. And if you're offering coupons, then I'll create one for you so you can give a little discount to anyone who's coming from you.
Well, that's very kind and completely unsolicited. We didn't discuss that in any way, shape, or form. I will ensure to put whatever code you give to me in our show notes, and I'll mention it at the beginning of the podcast. So thank you very much for coming on today, Amir, and telling us all about the latest and greatest stuff that you're doing. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
And today's ending fact comes from expandedramblings.com. We're looking at their WordPress statistics. And there was one on the most popular WordPress themes. And apparently it's a tie. It's Genesis and Divi, and they both have 10% of all WordPress sites. Now, this was last updated. Now, I'm English, so I'm going to get this wrong. So it was on the 2nd of the 23rd month, 2017.
Exactly, yeah. The 23rd month. It doesn't have a name. It's yet to be discovered. No, it's 23rd of February 2017.
Yes.
I'm surprised. I am surprised. And it's basically, I think it comes down to the fact that it's the communities that I live in, the Facebook groups that I'm in, and the little echo chambers that we all get ourselves into. Because for me, the things that I hear all the time are about Astra and about GeneratePress, and these would have been my pick for the most popular, but clearly not. I mean, we're a year out, so it's definitely a little bit out of date. But nevertheless, if you click on the link on their website, it shows you a bar chart, which indicates that at the time of writing it, Genesis had 10%, Divi had equally 10%, and then it slowly goes down. You've got your default WordPress theme at the time, things like 2017 and all of that kind of stuff. Avada on 5%, and the other is represented by, pretty much everything else, 53%. So there's quite a lot in that 53%. But there's things like Foodie Pro, a theme I've never even heard of, which gets 2%. Enfold, heard of that one.
Yes.
Another, I think 2%. Yeah, 2%. But I'm surprised. You were a big fan of Genesis, weren't you? Why Genesis?
Yeah, well, it was the really stable. Well, there's a history, isn't it? WordPress history with that one, because Brian Gardner did the first premium WordPress theme. He did Revolution, and this was his follow-up, Genesis. So we already had that. He always had those WordPress core developer fans out there who jumped on it, and they loved it, and it was very stable. And I think, it was a lifetime license you bought, and it was bought by people who make lots of websites.
Right.
So it doesn't surprise me, because it was really selling to professionals who would take that one license and build so many websites. And I think that's still the case. And I won't take mine down because it's still so stable. I'm not going to replace it.
So was that its main selling point, that it's entirely rock solid and stable? Was that one of the things that drew people in? It wasn't so packed with features left, right, and centre. It was just stable.
It used something that seems out of date now because of page builders, but I mean it allowed you to take WordPress widgets and place those in areas of your theme and style those, and so it gave people who weren't really developers a way of, with just copying and pasting a few PHP snippets, of doing a lot more than they could do before, while still keeping a fairly clean site.
I see. Okay. And Divi? Any experience of Divi?
No. Well, I was a member of that. I was in Elegant Themes for many, many years, and I never really used Divi. But yeah, I'm surprised. I guess that has caught it up. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Well, there you go. Because I'm in a silo, I wouldn't have picked those ones, but I'm pleased to be educated. I wonder if that's still true. It'd be interesting if that survey is redone. What are we now? Sort of 15 months later, whether it'd still be the same. My guess is we'd have some new incumbents on that chart, and a few would have fallen off. But there we go. Great. That's the end of this week's podcast. Thanks for joining us and listening to us drone on yet again. Please go to the website and click on the buttons and share it. iTunes reviews are always favourable. But I have nothing more to say except that I'm Nathan Wrigley.
And I'm David Wormsley.
And thanks for joining us, and we'll fade in the cheesy music and say we hope you join us next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.